Welcome to RecLess, a podcast making people smarter and more knowledgeable about parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three career-long friends from around the country, bringing their own unique and sometimes entertaining perspectives with a surprise guest each episode. This is RecLess.
Welcome to the 13th episode of RecLess, podcast where we are here to talk about all things park and rec and educate people on what we do and all the ups and downs of the park and rec industry through the eyes of three close friends from around the country. My name is Jay Tryon. I am your host today. And as always, I am joined by Shane Mize and Tom Venniro. Guys, what is going on?
How's it going?
Here in Dallas again.
Yeah, so we're once again live here in Dallas. We did this a few days ago, recorded our first episode that was live in person. Now we're on the tail end. The conference is officially over. The last session just completed, and the conference came to an end. And I got a question for the group on the other side of kind of what Tom asked when we did this a few days ago. We talked earlier about what we were excited about, and I'm going to pose the question. 3-4 days later, what is your biggest takeaway going home after the 2023 conference?
We talked about it earlier, Jay, and you brought me, or Shane, I should say, you introduced something to me that I really wasn't aware of in myself, maybe, is that kind of the extrovert that comes out in you at these conferences. Sometimes there's a little bit of introvert in there for certain people. Not everybody, we're go, go, go with people all the time. There's not really many moments of privacy and alone time, whatever you want to call that, right, where you actually have time to sit and think. Just kind of looking forward to all that was on our schedule. One of the events that I attended was last night, was the American Academy banquet. It's, I've been to it as an extern. I think one other time as a buddy. It's a long night. It's a lot of people. You're talking to so many people, great people. You're in a room with the best of the best, phenomenal minds in this profession. And we had a really cool experience. We were there, and Janet Bartnick, one of our former guests, she just finished her presidency with the Academy. And so she did a lot of announcements, right, when they were doing their awards. And she came through, and we had great experience, great conversation the entire time. But she came through and she made a comment. She said, I don't think I could do this with you two sitting there. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, Shane, we were sitting as close as I am to you to the awards table and the podium. Oh, wow. Like, we were the closest you can get. And so she joked about that. But then afterwards, she told Jay something that was really great. I was glad that the two of you were there, because it put me in a real state of, an easy state of mind. It's comforted her, which was really neat. So that experience was awesome. And again, in addition to that one particular experience at that event, so many great conversations.
Yeah, I'd piggyback on the conversations.
Yep.
We usually average 6,000 to 8,000 people at these conferences, and I think the announced number was closer to 9,000. I saw a lot of packed rooms, saw a lot of packed corridors and hallways, but I saw a lot of people, including us, but even people that I didn't know, but that you would observe people see other people for the first time in what was either a year or maybe even a couple years since they had last seen this person. And I am constantly reminded how small and intimate our industry is. How I remember when we were looking for assistant city managers in Pflugerville, and they brought a round of 6 people in, and there was a lady from Doral. And I remember saying, "Oh, do you know Barbie Hernandez?" "Yeah, absolutely know Barbie Hernandez." No one else in that room had the ability to make that connection, because they're a public works director, or they're a library director, or a finance director, and their industries are large. In fact, in a lot of those scenarios, you can go work in the private sector in finance and then jump back in the public sector. And so they never develop a network like we do. But we don't really have a private sector really in our industry. I mean, you have hotels and water parks and things like that. But what you really see is we're the tip of the spear in the parks and rec industry, this public sector, these folks that come to this conference. And we had a lot of them here this year. It was great to see, and it was great to catch up with people I hadn't seen in a year. This podcast has made me feel like I see y'all more. Someone asked me, they're like, how often do you see these two guys? But really just once a year, in person. I said, a couple more times with Jay if I'm on the committee with him. But I think it's cool to be here and not only experience the closeness and the intimacy of our industry, but just to observe other people doing it. You see 2 people in a corridor, and you find out later that they hadn't seen each other in 2 or 3 years, and they served on a committee, or they just met one time, or they were at director school or whatever. I think I'm constantly reminded. At times you can feel overwhelmed maybe in your agency, or that you're by yourself a little bit, and you find out a lot of people are going through the same thing you're going through: work-life balance, staff leadership and management issues, things like that, and growth, managing growth. But you also find out that they're just a phone call away.
Yeah. I'll piggyback off both of what you said, really. I mean, I think the conversations that are here are great. Some people that we didn't see last year are here. But then to add to Tom's point, I attended the Best of the Best ceremony. All three of us have a pretty wide circle of friends. And I use the term friend because there's a lot of us that have seen people get awards and be recognized for things. Like last night, Chris Nunes received the Dirk Richwine Mentorship Award. And I've always looked up to Chris from the mentor program. He's done so many great things, but I also consider him a good friend. But to see that happen and see get the award that's very deserving is kind of very exciting time. Just kind of know all the time and energy he's put into it. And then have Janet get an award last night.
Sure.
Like you said with Janet, like she sat right in front of us and we're talking, and I consider Janet a friend too. But then to kind of like sit back and like see the big picture of the impact they're having, and I'm very fortunate to have them as friends too. And then see all the award winners that were there from CAPRA accreditation and different scholarships that were there. And I don't always make it to the best of the best.
Right.
And I think last night was that like, okay, I need to make sure I always come to the best of the best, because it's one of those, it makes you look at everyone that you've known for so long, or maybe you don't know them, but now you see a new name that you're like, oh, I want to go meet that person based on that innovative award they just received, or that scholarship that person received, and like kind of find them and pick their brain on some things, because they're doing great things. So
yeah,
that was exciting.
Standing room only, which was really neat. I didn't realize that it got that crowd. And just to add to the Chris and Janet, obviously both former podcast guests.
Did they give us a shout out, either of them?
They didn't have
speak. There was no speech.
They would have
talked about that.
easily.
Of course, RecLess. We owe you a lot, and so really cool thing that happened to again tie in so well with both of you just said, that close knit, looking up to people, a group of people, mentees, those who look up to Janet, Chris, made an effort to get the two of them from the Academy banquet to this other event, which was originally meant to gather young professionals and those in the Hispanic Professionals Network. And so you already got a great group of people. But anyway, they made the effort to get them there to surprise them, because they respect them so much for all that they've done for a lot of individuals.
Well, we have a guest waiting. So got a couple hints.
Impatiently waiting.
Yeah, they definitely were trying to get in. That's security actually trying to get in again and clean the trash. That's not the guest right there waving. So today's guest is former extern, which there is a lot of them. So that narrows your list a little bit.
It's not Haley.
Today's guest did present this week at conference while we're in Dallas. Our guest has lived on both the East Coast and the West Coast.
I think I know who it is.
We've had a few conversations with some guests so far where we've talked about fear.
I know who this is.
And I will give this guest credit that they're not afraid of change. They've taken some opportunities to try some new things. You still don't know. Our guest once, here's one, this will give it away for you maybe. Our guest once was a competitive bowler. See if you know that one.
A collegiate bowler?
Yes.
Why am I terrible at the guessing part of this
This
show?
is awesome.
Yeah, keep it going. Let's keep him on for an hour.
I didn't know. See, the bowling
She's
thing.
been on the program committee.
Hey, I love that you're taking over as host right now.
I'm just trying to say
this guest was also a past president of the NRPA Ethnic Minorities Society. Okay. So that might give it away.
So wait, did you already talked about this earlier?
Yeah. What person I said?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So
She's got silver sneaks on.
today, I have not seen her sneakers today.
Always.
But today's guest is the Deputy Director of Aging and Disability Services for the City of Seattle. Please welcome, as she's walking in the room, Dr. Tiffany Johnson.
Do we have to call her doctor? Is that a contractual thing?
Yes.
I believe so.
Welcome.
What's up?
Hello.
Long time no see. You wandering the halls.
So we can see you because we are actually here in person. Obviously, people that will listen to this will not be able to, but you are dressed to the nines, got some shiny, nice shoes on, great outfit, looking sharp as always.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, hey, before we did the introduction, we were talking about just this week and being at conference, and we talked about what one of our biggest takeaways was. Was there a moment that you learned something or acknowledged that this is such a unique week in profession, and I'm so proud to be in it. Is there something that you've taken that you would say, hey, now that the conference is over, this was like an aha moment for me this week?
Yeah, there are a lot of aha moments, some really good sessions. Seeing old colleagues, you guys, Parks and Rec family, meeting new people, networking. Opening session was really, really good. The keynote speaker there, and talking about we all have bias, right? And it's okay. We're socialization. Where we come from kind of develops like how we see things, and so that was a huge takeaway. And actually looking forward to following up and looking at her TED talk. But it was some amazing sessions. A lot of the really, really good ones that I wanted to go to were happening at the same time.
Yeah, heard that.
So that was the only bummer. But all in all, in RPA, the conference is always a hit for me.
Yeah.
That's why I keep coming back every year.
You just said something about where, and you said it in a different context. You were talking about how we have biases because of, we all come from different backgrounds. You've come from a lot of different agencies. You have always been very good at acknowledging people that have helped pave the way for you to get there. If you had to highlight one or two of your biggest influences that really helped you get where you are now, who would it be and why?
First of all, my bonus mother, Toni Thompson.
Yeah.
Met her when I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
She worked in Parks and Recreation and took me in as her own.
We used to see at these conferences a lot.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that's how I started coming to the NRPA conference. She kicked me in my butt and said, "You're going." And it's not even a question, right? And then I'll go to Rosalind Johnson. She's the sister I always wish I never had, right? Most people don't know this, but Rosalind gave me my first Parks and Rec. Well, she didn't give me, she interviewed me for my first full-time Parks and Rec position in DC. Hardest interview of my life. And so I made it a point to make the rest of her career the hardest.
Yeah, make her pay for it.
Great, thank you. And then I, without question, I have to acknowledge our new chair of the board of directors, Jesus Aguirre.
Yeah.
Jesus went to DC in 2010. I was then working with the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. And I liked his energy. I was asked to apply for a supervisory position. I did. And we rocked and rolled, got DC its first initial accreditation. And then he left to go to Seattle. A year after he was in Seattle, a position opened and I applied for it. And I moved all the way across the country. It's not a whole lot of people I'd move cross country for,
right?
Other than the three of you. Right? So those are three really, really influential people who have pushed my career and have mentored me and continue to tell me what I want to hear, both personally and professionally.
When you talk about moving across country, first of all, I think you said energy with Jesus. I think it's funny. I always think of temperament. He just doesn't seem to get rattled. He's always got the right thing to say. He's always really calm, cool, and collected. But I'm sure, behind closed doors and stuff, he definitely has an energy to him as well. But you talked about how you went to the West Coast, and I think this is interesting. We talk about sometimes when we're able to talk about this with people on this podcast who have moved. It almost felt like this West Coast thing was like a magnet drawing you out there. And then you have fought it a couple of times in your career. You've tried to move back. You've tried to move back and for obviously good intentioned reasons of being closer to family and friends and that home and maybe even culture that you grew up in and that you yearn for in some ways. But you're a West Coast gal. You have become a Seattle lady. You really do love what that city has done for you in a lot of ways. And I know sometimes it's tough on you mental health wise and things because of the rainy days and some of the stuff that you
and time change.
Yeah.
That was something we've talked about. Just, obviously connecting with family, but you're so far away from a time zone perspective that it's hard to connect.
So what is it about Seattle that you truly love and you hope that maybe you will always be able to stay there? What is it that makes it really difficult?
So I want to say that I am a Washington woman.
Okay.
A Washington woman.
Not a West Coast.
Yeah, well, 3/4 of my time I am in Seattle.
Yeah.
But home is always going to be DC. What keeps me?
Oh, Washington. Yeah, DC or state.
You're just bringing that up.
So the thing that I like about Seattle, and I didn't realize it until I left and went to Virginia, was how free we can be.
Yeah.
It's a really, really progressive city. The amount of resources in government is phenomenal. The amount of money, budgets is, I've never seen anything like it outside of the private sector, right?
Sure.
But it's for community. And so as long as I am working with people and I'm in a position to serve people, I Seattle has done that for me. Not only just work, right? Now that I'm in aging and disability services, our largest partner is Parks and Recreation. So I still work in Parks and Recreation, literally.
Yeah.
I'm at my old office at least every other week.
Yeah.
And so another thing that draws me is community. Community is important to me, you know. I'm being mentored by an amazing bonus grandmother, right? So there are two African-American women in the history of this country that founded colleges. Mary McLeod Bethune, who founded Bethune-Cookman College in Florida, and Dr. Maxine Mims, who founded Evergreen State College, Tacoma campus, right? So I'm actually going to be teaching there starting in November. But she is putting me in places that I probably wouldn't have been without that community, right? So then there's my church community. Right? Everybody's not religious. I've found a home, and it's like a family. Like I feel more at home in Seattle than I do in DC. I go to DC and I'm like, okay, I've had my fix. Now it's time to go back. I also like the weather, right? Most people don't like when it rains. When it rains, I'll just go and fly and go see Nate in Vegas.
Right.
It's only like a 2-hour flight.
And it's never raining in Vegas.
Right.
Nate Caramello.
Yeah.
Yes. But summers, it never gets over 80, 85. It's probably a high.
Nice.
You don't need air conditioning. And it's just mild weather all year.
Yeah.
So I can wear sweatshirts all year at night.
Sure, hoodies and your sneaks.
Hoodies and sneakers. You know me.
Yeah.
So can I just piggyback off those questions?
Yes.
We follow each other on Facebook. I get a chance to see what you're doing, and I think it's really what's one of the really neat things about all of our relationships. We can see what we're all doing from afar. You've traveled, you've had a few different job opportunities, you've experienced some adversity in the job market and personally, and had a lot of. We talked about this just before you got on. You seem fearless, right? You take a lot of. You take those risks that I don't think everybody would take. A lot of people get, and that's fine. If they're comfortable where they are, that's great. Could you identify, so kind of going along those themes of like a list, can you identify like 3 lessons from the road? Like your journey, if you had to give our listeners some life lessons that you learned from this journey, which is pretty incredible. Could you?
It's interesting that you say that. Rosalind Johnson, Addie Weaver, and we did a session this morning called Good Trouble, Keep Your Foot on the Gas.
I love it.
Right? And so for me, I've always just been a person to follow my own way. I like the road less traveled, right? When somebody tells me that I can't do something, that gives me the energy to want to do it more and prove them, not even really prove them wrong, but just because I don't want them to think that I'm inadequate, right? So like just getting up, it takes a lot of, so I've given back jobs, right? Without having a job, not knowing what to do. And just my natural instinct was start a consulting business. So I did that, but it got lonely. And so the social loneliness during a pandemic and just working with yourself, I was like, I got to get back into working with people and seeing people because I'm highly extroverted, as you guys know, right? So just the willingness to believe that you can do it. And if you fail, it's okay. We all have failed at something in our lives and we learn from those failures.
Sure.
So I don't know if that's 3, but
that's great.
The courage that it takes is not easy. I think that having you guys as peers that I can pick up the phone and say, hey, look, I'm dealing with this. And I've called Shane way too many times.
And if I don't answer, she calls my wife.
Yep. Sure enough will.
She does.
Sure enough will. He doesn't answer the phone, I will. Hannah. And so I just think having different perspective, like what you guys are doing is amazing. Like people are getting to hear different perspectives. A lot of people can't afford to come to these conferences.
Sure.
So this is their CEU, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
That's cool. And kind of feeding off of what Tom just asked. I mean, like you've always admired that you're willing to make a change, move across the country, uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, one of the highest scored sessions.
Yeah, I mean, you did a session about uncomfortable conversations, talking about DEI and a variety of things. Where does that strength come from to have those uncomfortable conversations?
Having to live it, having been in organizations where I'm either the only person of color in leadership or the only woman in leadership or the only person identified with the LGBTQIA community, right? And so being a triple, coming from 3 different angles, like being that only one. Like you have to. I have to be a voice because if I'm not a voice, then there won't be someone to come in after me. If I'm not at the table and people don't see themselves at the table, they don't want to be at the table. So if there's not a chair at the table for me, I'm going to bring my own chair.
And I bet you that there's a lot of people that have the same mindset, but they don't have the courage to have these conversations. But they see you having those conversations, and hopefully, maybe people have approached you about that and said, like, "Hey, you've inspired me to either have a conversation or think about it, or maybe work up to that courage."
I think another reason or another piece of where I got that courage from. I don't think I would have this courage if I would have stayed in DC. Seattle changed for the better, right? I had to go there to slow down while I was working on my PhD, but I didn't realize how progressive they're having conversations. They're calling out race and social justice initiatives. They're calling out equity.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even I've been more educated in going to Seattle. I didn't know about pronouns. We were talking about pronouns, and I got there in 2016, right? And there are still places who are like, why do I need to call people by their pronouns?
Right.
Why do I need to acknowledge that, right? And so I think just going there, just opened up my brain, and then being elevated and amplified in community, that they're like, we want to hear your voice.
Sure.
And now I don't know how to be silent.
Yeah. I think DEI has come about in a lot of ways because we have so many agencies that have been around for a really long time before probably the word diversity meant something different. You know, diversity of food or thought or something else, not so much diversity of color. There's probably a time where it would have been strange for some of these cities or agencies to even think that they would have an African-American person working in some of these spots or nor less leading them, right? Part of that is due to the part of the world they probably generated in, and part of that is due to how long that agency's been around, right? So let's say you're starting an agency from scratch. How do you make it live the values we need them to live now, but also be open and malleable to what is the thing that we have to hit the mark on 20 years from now, right? Because every agency at the time was probably trying to be progressive, and they have seen at times initiatives and cultural concerns outrace them, and they've had to adapt to it, right? So how do you create an agency now to make sure we're focused on doing what we need to do to be open and have a great hiring structure and some of maybe the more progressive things you've seen in the Seattle side, but make sure, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, those things can be edited if the world moves in a different direction again.
Yeah, I'm an strong advocate for constant learning,
Yeah.
right? We don't know what we don't know.
Right.
If I were starting an agency, that would be amazing, first of all. But before starting that agency, I would do some research geographically in different locations to see what diversity looks like in those communities. I reach out to organizations that provide the best practices around diversity, equity, and inclusion. The biggest part about that, what people don't really talk about, is the belonging piece. How do you make sure that people feel like they belong to an organization? So I'd hire a very diverse staff to reflect community, of course, but also to not reflect community.
Right.
So that community can also learn about different culture, right? I would ensure that our team are together being trained, right? That we're attending conferences and that we're doing these visits together so that we can see what diversity looks like, right? So where I currently work, I would definitely take them to Seattle. There are 101 languages spoken in one zip code. Maybe the most diverse zip code in the entire country. And so all of our print materials or like applications and waivers and all of that, 10 main dialects for 101 different languages.
Right.
So I definitely do like a week there and have some community people come in and talk about their culture, help people to understand. In some places I can bow at you and you appreciate it. In some places I can bow at you and it's disrespectful. There are places where if I walk in there in their location and I have my shoes on, I've already disrespected their culture. And so having a cultural understanding, not just of race, but of culture, of language, understanding like the diverse ethnic needs of different communities. And so that will be my starting point. And then I would reach out to community and have some community engagement ambassadors to be the voice,
Right.
To get the input and the
To be
feedback.
able to change.
Yeah.
For, I don't know, I'm not making the word here, but for 100 years, it's probably been Columbus Day. We just had it recently, right?
Yep.
And now it's not.
Mhm.
It's very few places that know now it's Columbus Day. It's Indigenous Peoples Day. You know what I mean? And there will be something else. There's something we're already doing. There's something that we're comfortable doing that we're already doing. And I would love to hear if you already know what it is, but there's something that we're doing that's soon, very soon, we'll stop calling it that, or we'll stop celebrating it that way, or we'll stop doing whatever cultural or historical thing we used to do on that thing. And I think that's evolution. That's us evolving. That's us getting better in every iteration of that. That's us being more empathetic and knowing what that term meant, or that hero that wasn't really a hero was, or whatever, whatever it is. But it's constant. It's always moving. So you can't DI proof anything, because Indigenous Day's coming around the corner for an agency that thought they were Columbus Day 100 years. You know what I mean? Like,
And then and just talking about, being diverse,
sure.
like especially as parks and recreation professionals and programmers, we do special events, right? We observe a lot of Christian holidays.
Sure.
Right. And so we do a lot of patriarchal daddy-daughter dance,
Yep.
right? Instead of a parent dance.
Yeah.
And so just in thinking, there's a huge East African population in Seattle. And there are a lot of people who practice Islam. And so when you think about programming during the months that Ramadan is here and people are fasting, they can't engage.
Right.
So the youth, they can't play basketball at the late night program. Well, at late night, they can after the sun has gone down. But we have to just think about that. And it's just like us having a pop-up in a Jewish community on a Saturday. How many people you think gonna come? Not a lot.
Yeah.
Not a lot. And so just being mindful that the Christian culture has dominated the way that we program.
Right.
Not even just the Christian culture, religious culture, socialization, right?
Sure.
The things we see, the things we know, without really like opening up and saying, oh no, I never thought about that. A lot of this stuff I never thought of, never in a million years.
Yeah. Ramadan, I'm a bigger soccer fan, obviously, than these two guys are.
A little bit.
By that, I mean,
Why is that obvious?
a huge amount.
I prefer sports that don't end in a tie.
Be careful. But what I have found interesting most recently is the last couple of years, if they have an athlete on the field that's observing Ramadan, when that time change happens where they're actually allowed to start taking any type of water, or because they're out there playing, they'll actually take a break, and they wouldn't before. Like if you choose to observe that, that's it. But it's at your detriment. And now it's like you observe it. I mean, quote unquote, at your detriment, because we're not going to move a game back. But as soon as it hits the time that you can actually take in water and take in food, they stop it. And those two guys are on the sideline, and they give them water. They give them this type of energy gel, something that they can get into their system. And it's not quick. It's not long. It's adaptive. It's empathetic. It's like, hey, these guys are doing this for religious reasons. We're going to give them the 2 minutes it takes to get them a drink of water, hydrate them and get them back out there so that we can go out and continue to have this competition. I think stuff like that's really cool.
You mentioned a couple programming ideas. Is there a big difference you've seen, or are there some highlights? Like obviously we talked about your move across the country. So been in Virginia, been in DC, been in Maryland, been in Seattle. Programming wise, is there a vast difference in like what the communities have wanted from a programming perspective across different sides of the coast?
Yes and no. It depends on so DC Parks and Recreation, Seattle Parks and Recreation, very much similar in terms of like what they spend money on, right? They're going to spend to make sure the community is happy, and whatever community wants, community gives. But there's also a lot of room for innovation there when you have that. Maryland National Capital, the same. In Virginia, the community was different, right? And so I think that the diversity in community determines the programming and the things that you provide.
The cost recovery, what that cost
Yep.
recovery limits in the
Yep.
future. Yeah.
Yep. Barriers to transportation determine like if people have access to get to programming, and there's financial barriers as well. In Seattle, they have a lot of scholarships for not only youth, but adults who can afford to participate in programs. DC, we had a lot of like scholarships for summer camps.
Okay.
In Virginia, we were just getting started with the scholarship program, and that was fairly new. Well, it should have rolled out by now. I'm not sure. Probably need to ask you.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that the diversity of your community determines your programs. So there's a lot of Tai Chi. There's a lot of like fitness classes. People want more fitness classes in on the West Coast, where I've found, versus youth sports, right? They still want youth sports, but it's not as big. Like there's no Pop Warner football in Seattle. There's
No tackle.
There's huge youth tackle football in DC.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it all. I think it just depends on the community and the team that you have leading it and the direction that the leader wants to see the organization going. But not huge disparities. No, we don't have as many soccer fields as he has, and we definitely don't have as many community centers as you have, right?
For someone that's trying to navigate their career, and I have a whole lot of fun questions that I want to ask you too, because I really love talking about traveling. But let's stay with the Parks and Rec thing. For someone who wants to navigate their career, you already talked about some of the differences in Seattle, all right, and what that's meant for you. But clearly, you have a love for the East Coast, right? I mean, that's your, that is a part of who you are. What would you tell someone if they're navigating that and they're saying, geez, I'm really up in the air on if I want to be kind of settled here on the East Coast or I want to go try out the West? There's differences, right? And so what would you tell someone looking to make that decision?
Be the change that you want to see. Sometimes in order to grow, you have to go. And sometimes in order to get in higher positions, you have to leave. I left DC, went back to DC, right? I tell them to reach out to their network, and if their network doesn't know, for them to reach out to someone who's in that area, and just at minimum try it out for a year. You never know, I tried it out for 5-6 years, and I was like, I'm homesick. I want to go to Virginia. That wasn't the move for me. I didn't realize how entrenched Seattle had become of the person that I am. And I was like, I'm going back, but I tried it. So I can't say that, I didn't follow a goal that I wanted to achieve. So I definitely connecting with people is important, even if you don't like people. If you're introverted, not don't like people.
Sometimes I think Shane doesn't like people. Yeah. Or maybe it's just he doesn't like me.
Right.
That's exactly why I'm looking at him.
So going a step further with that, you mentioned use your network. Let's say you're their network. I just want to know, a couple pros and cons about the East Coast, a couple pros and cons about, if you were to give them that list. That's a pretty typical experience.
Tom's a con of the East Coast, right?
Yes, of course.
I'd also encourage them to visit before they made a decision to go there, and visit when the weather is bad.
Did you? Did you just go?
I just went.
That's what I thought.
I just went. I did not visit.
Yeah.
I should.
So that's a lesson
learned, exactly.
So that's the advice that I would give them. Go and stay for maybe a week.
Yeah.
Find out the tourist attractions, but go to where the non-tourists are, and experience people's, day to day.
So you said something a few minutes ago that I think have coined the term almost, but be the change you want to be. I think we've all heard you say it for many years. We're sitting here last day of conference. What's one change you want to make in the next year that if I grab you next year in Atlanta, I'm gonna say, did you make that change?
Ooh, that's a loaded question, because not only do I do my work for government, but I have my consulting firm, right? And so I think that I'm just going to go with government. I want to strengthen the relationship with the Human Services Department and the Parks and Recreation Department, because we are already working together, but people are operating almost siloed. And so we're doing double work. So I want to use my relationship with Parks and Recreation to strengthen those programs, both for youth and for our elders and those with disabilities.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that for our listeners? Be the change you want to be. I would love that to be kind of deconstructed.
I think we've all had leaders who we don't want to be like, who were horrible examples, or they, in some aspect, they perform or they operated in a manner that we were like, I would never be that leader. So for me, I've always wanted to like be an example. And so not only for myself, but for my 17-year-old brother, like for the youth that I was working with, for my staff, like be the change that you want to see. For me is being positive, but being forward thinking, being innovative, right? Not being afraid to take risks. Right? Those are just some pillars of mine that come under the be the change for me. Establishing loyal relationships, but also knowing when to sever relationships if needed, right? Doing things different. I grew up in a place where most people never left. Most of my family that grew up in DC are still in DC.
Yeah.
Or they leave and come back.
No,
They just don't leave.
They
They
just
just don't
don't
leave.
leave.
Okay.
and they haven't been to Seattle, right?
Right.
But yeah, just following the path that I believe is the path for me.
I think you're definitely not risk adverse. We've talked about that. You're willing to try new things. I think in our time, in our careers, there's always going to be a opportunity, whether it be a job opportunity or a speaking opportunity or something you wish you would have taken advantage of in a city that you weren't able to do. What is that one regret that you're like, man, I wish I'd taken that path, or I wish I'd have taken that agency or talked longer to that councilman or whatever. What opportunity might have been missed in that?
And can that be reversed too? Like, I wish I didn't take that. Do you see what I'm saying? Like
No,
that
that's
is
my question.
Well, I'm sorry.
I love you guys.
I'm glad someone loves him. Other than Hannah.
That's a good question. I don't have a lot of regrets,
That's good.
right?
Sure.
I don't.
There's got to be something you look back and be like, boy, I'd love to see what happened if I'd have tried that.
Yeah, I sometimes and you know I'm an open book. I share everything. I was one of 2 finalists for Detroit to be director in Detroit.
Yeah.
I definitely
You look like a Lions fan today.
No,
Actually,
they-
look at that outfit.
they thought that I was too timid. I was actually a comment. Someone told me, not the actual hirer.
Right.
But they said that they thought that I was timid because I don't speak very loudly, and
Right.
I'm just a natural. It's called swag. They didn't like my swag.
Right.
But I wonder what Detroit would have been like because it is a huge urban space. Tremendous opportunity on a recovery after financial
Years of financial
Yeah.
hardship.
years of financial hardship. Yeah, I wonder what that would be. But then I thought about winter,
Yeah.
and now I don't regret it.
It's a different winter than Seattle, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, snow.
Different winter than every coast.
Yeah, for sure. It's close to whatever Great Lakes.
Yeah, lakefront snow and the wind, that would be
Brutal.
tough.
Yeah, but just being a city girl, I wonder what that beast would have been.
Sure. I got a question. Fun question.
Okay.
Could all 3 of us beat you in bowling if we combined our frames? Are you that good of a bowler? I've never bowled with you.
Is that what boat?
I've
Can
never
we do
bowled.
that next time? Do we
Let's do it.
schedule? Because
That would be fun.
You do know I was a college bowler.
That's why.
So we did an introduction and I was dropping facts for them to guess.
Yeah.
And that was one of the facts was you were a competitive bowler. And his face was like, I don't know anyone that was a bowler. So he had no idea. He knew.
this is
I did.
news to me and very intrigued.
Yes, I was a 4-year captain of
Where?
North Carolina Central University.
Okay.
You can look it up.
High game.
I haven't hit a 300, 287.
287. Okay.
Average, Jay.
Oh man.
I'm
I think
like
the
a-
last
I'm like a
maybe
108,
20.
Yeah.
So all right,
Maybe.
maybe the 3 of us combined might have a chance, but
You have a chance, and I haven't bowled as much while I was in school.
Sure.
So I just picked it back up. I'm at maybe 167. The goal is to get back to 180.
Could I beat you, me versus you, if I got the bumper?
Nope, you don't get a chance.
Not even with the bumpers. No, if I had the bumpers and you didn't, could I beat you?
You don't get a chance to have bumper.
I should be able to have bumpers.
See, that's your bias.
The bumpers?
Yeah.
I can only hit 87. You've already said you can hit 167, so I need the bumpers. When you play golf with a different handicap, you get strokes.
It actually sounds like you're confident that you're going to get an 87. You must have played like this morning, and I just didn't know you were out there.
No, but I've been a pretty solid 87 to 100 bowler.
I think I know what we're doing tonight.
Yeah, pretty proud.
We're
of
going
that.
bowling.
I mean that's not good.
No, it's not.
87 to
No,
100.
that's missing every other.
All right. I have to ask my fun question. So I didn't know that about you, that snow, you're anti-snow.
I'm anti-snow, but I ski. That's
Makes
All
a lot
right.
of sense.
make it make
That's-
sense, right? So what I will say the snow in DC has not ruined me, but there was a blizzard in 1996 and we had 3 feet of snow. And we couldn't get out. I mean, we could get out.
That
but
pretty
we could
much
only
shuts it
walk,
all down, right? Yeah.
DC snow, because it snows there a lot, you have the equipment to remove the snow.
Sure.
Right? Seattle snow, I don't know if you all saw last year, it was all over TikTok and Instagram. People were literally sliding down hills. It's a very hilly place. We don't have the equipment there.
Right.
So when it snows, you're stuck. Or you would want to be stuck.
That's scary too.
You're either stuck or in a hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had like we had a snowstorm and then an ice storm. Like cars were spinning out. Like that was scary. That was scary last year. But I do like to ski.
Okay.
I skied in high school.
It's an adventure sport. It's fun.
That's cool.
So my question based off of the locations and then kind of going off of your fun. I think we always like to let our listeners know a little bit more about the guests on a personal level. And I love to talk about when we do our events, what are we incorporating? So food, we incorporate food a lot of events.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to an event in DC, Virginia, Seattle, what am I getting? What kind of food? What are we looking for? I need to know. So I don't think I've been to DC, but I don't think I've been to the other 3 locations or the other 2 locations.
So there's this sauce called mumbo sauce. It's a sweet sauce, and you put it on fried chicken, on fried fish, on French fries.
Is this
If you go, it's a DC thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you go to DC and you're at an event, if it's not a Parks and Rec event, you're definitely gonna get some chicken and mumbo sauce.
Mhm.
If you go to a Parks and Rec event, the likelihood is you're gonna get a hamburger, a hot dog, or some pizza.
Sure.
Right.
Well, let's say for the sake of the argument, it's like a food truck rodeo or something.
Yeah. So Virginia's really diverse in terms of cuisine. So you might be able to get a little bit of everything.
What's your go-to?
My go-to were steak and cheese egg rolls.
Okay. Now we're talking.
Steak and cheese egg rolls. If you go to an event in Seattle, you're gonna get either a chicken, pork, or vegetable banh mi.
Oh,
That sounds great. I
I
had one
could get-
yesterday.
did you?
No, wow. Sorry, I did
Yeah.
not have a
Yeah, I
banh
was
mi.
about to say,
I
if
forgot.
you had a
The whole
banh mi
thing.
and didn't
Can't
tell me
have
you had a
that.
banh
Yeah,
mi, I'd be
that
disappointed.
sounds amazing.
So Vietnamese restaurants are like huge.
Really? I
Because
love
makes sense.
banh mi.
It's always cold. So people want pho.
Okay, makes sense.
They want to what?
They want pho. Not
Actually,
they want
PHO,
Yeah.
kind of similar to Pflugerville.
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 That's right.
We'll stay on the meal question. What was the best meal you had in Dallas? I know you seek out good food.
Yeah, but I don't eat a lot, right? Steak.
Mm.
Every time I come to Texas, I make Shane makes me a steak. I
Well,
make
never
him.
makes me a steak.
She makes me burn it.
Yep.
You need to charge.
So the YO Ranch House. I don't know, but there's also kitchen and cocktails.
Okay.
In Dallas.
Okay.
I have 2 things that I need to do before I leave Texas, and that's go to Buc-ee's
Baby.
Mm.
and to go to Shipley Donuts to get kolaches.
Mm.
What?
Yeah.
Buc-ee's. Have you been there before?
Yes,
Okay.
it's a go-to.
We went once and it's not, there's not anything like that in the Northeast. It's massive gas station, convenient. And I've got a Buc-ee's baseball and a Buc-ee's bottle opener. We had to get something.
Yeah, it's something.
Yeah.
It's like the Walmart of the gas stations.
It's huge.
Yeah, huge.
You ever been?
I've been one time. It was actually not that long ago. It was in April in Florida. And I've heard all about it, seen,
Oh, they have Buc-ee's out there now?
yeah, seen people wearing t-shirts and never knew what the hype was. And I still to this day couldn't believe it. Like I just like never seen so many people eating like quality food from a gas station or just excited to go. Like people were walking in like with their phone, like literally like filming like what it looks like. And I was blown away by it. So it was interesting.
I got a question for you. We served on program committee together with Jay for a while and longer than him because we're way more tenured. And we've talked at different times about our industry and what we hope for next steps. What are a couple of changes that you hope our industry will see in changes in the next couple of years?
I hope that we listen more to the youth. We do more youth engagement, right? To see what kind of programs and services they want. They're the future. I don't know if you recognize it, and I'm learning this as I'm working with the aging and disability population. The aging population is the fastest growing population. And so as Parks and Recreation professionals, it'll be important for us to partner with like human service departments and divisions like mine to find out what resources are available and have those resources easily available at community centers, at parks, at trainings, training staff so that they know, right, what the options are for this growing population. What are the needs? Pickleball is just becoming a trend on the East Coast. Pickleball is older than us,
Yeah.
right? Started in Bainbridge Island in Washington
Mm.
before we were born. And so just following trends, I think that the e-business is going to take off more than it has. And so in terms of facility design, I think Parks and Recreation professionals need to be mindful of integrating technology into facilities.
Sure.
If we're going to continue to grasp this generation, they're really, really hands-on with technology, but in finding ways to engage them still. I think that those are some really big trends.
Even the big AT&T screen that's on the wall outside of this food hall down here. I mean, that's definitely an attractor. That's something that they invested in. It's entertainment purposes. You can play games. You can have a gathering spot there. But even when you're not hosting something there, it's art. It's changing. It's marketing. It's art. It's a lot of different stuff. Yeah, that's a big tech piece for them.
I walked into my home for the week. So my hotel's right across the street from that. It's what's it called, Magnolia. And I got in at maybe 5 o'clock on Sunday, and they're showing one of the NFL games. And the courtyard was just packed with people watching football, and that's amazing. Not everybody has access to that either, right?
So tech and creating community out of it.
Yeah,
A spot where football fans who are rabid can come together and root for their team, their tribe,
and money, because then it's like you're going to go there, you're going to walk in the food hall, get some meat, get something to drink, and you're going to watch the game outside.
But like I was just starting to say, I just think not everybody has access to that, especially in today's day and age, right? People are cutting cords. They're just not paying for all these subscriptions. So imagine that you didn't have access to watch that game at home. Maybe you don't want to go to a bar.
Yeah.
And you could just go right outside. Yeah. Watch the game.
Yeah. Out in nature.
Yeah.
Breathing fresh air.
Yes. And what that does for your mindset.
We're starting to see places like that more. Plazas, public spaces, things that you've seen in Europe for a long period of time, but America is really starting to invest in that more, where roads are being 1 or 2 corridor car paths now. They're the one way, or they're one each lane, when it used to feel like all roads had to be 4 lanes or whatever. You talked about it. Where are you talking about? Y'all shut down some city streets for a program.
So that was our Sunday event last week. We have one this Sunday. We shut down a mile of roads in 6 neighborhoods, and it's an event called Corridors Connect, where we just bring the community together. And we partner with the city departments, the county departments, and we really work with all the local agencies within the neighborhoods, and they bring up food trucks, we bring music, we bring games, there's live music, there's activities. We close down the streets for parks. We turn the streets into parks.
What's the mileage?
It's a mile,
1 mile
each route, but there's 6 routes. Wow. Okay. And they're all 6 different neighborhoods.
And you're seeing, like, Clyde Warren Park is a deck park.
Yeah.
That's not something we'd have ever seen in the past. And now you're starting to see more deck parks where they're taking these overpasses and turning them into green spaces. Once again, like we were talking about with this AT&T area outside, that was a road. I mean, because we tried to go down it when we were dropping you off, and they've taken a section of that street and they said, no, this is now dedicated to community space, plazas. I mean, there's obviously retail there, and there's some commerce created off the people gathering in those spots, but they're not shutting it down as like a corridor program. They've decided that that'll never be a street again.
No.
Yep. And in Seattle, they shut down parks. No one can drive through, not all parks, but they designate different parks throughout the summer. And they shut it down where cars can't come through, and it's just bikes.
Oh, that's cool.
So people are just biking throughout the park.
One more for me is based on we've talked about this. We mix it in every once in a while with a few of the guests, but I think you're a really great guest for this. Work-life balance. How do you do it? You're a busy person.
I am. I really am. Between government work and my own business. One of the cool things, and this is another reason why I went back to Seattle. Seattle only has a 2-day in the office mandate.
Oh,
So
guess we're all moving to Seattle.
yeah, I only have to go in the office. I go more than 2
Sure.
because I
Yeah.
like people, right? I like to see people. But I have that work-life balance is a part of our mission and values, and it's embedded in the culture. And so for me, I take vacation. When the weather starts getting bad, I go to Vegas and I see our good friend Nate, literally every 3 months when the weather gets bad. Also, I when I have an opportunity to sleep in, I sleep in. That's important for me. Doing a little bit better with drinking more water.
Yeah, good.
But yeah, the work-life balance piece, I found that the higher you climb, you get this kind of set the tone and direction for what that looks like, not only for your staff, but for yourself. And so I'm just trying to lead by example in that aspect, but also letting them know that it's important that you take off.
Yeah.
If you have vacation, use it. Don't go in the red. Because it's something realistically speaking, if we go today or tomorrow, our job will be advertised probably, right?
Yeah.
So just taking time for self.
It's important.
Yeah.
I don't think we do it enough.
No, I love what you said about setting the example too for your staff, because there are workaholics out there, right? And that's hard to live up to if you're watching someone who's constantly working, go, 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 and not taking that time. And personally, I've gone through that, and for me, the big catalyst to change was young kids, right? That the catalyst can be something for anybody, where you go through something and say, I'm working too much, right? But for me, it was kids. And then all of a sudden, my team started to see a shift in my behavior where I would say, you know what, I just got to sit this one out. I want to be doing this with the family. And so it was almost where they would tilt their heads. Really? You're not going to be there type of thing? I think you just have to find what your catalyst is, but that's helped me because I used to really struggle to find the balance.
But then that empowers them to lead.
Yes.
So leadership can happen at all levels.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we always do the work, we're not preparing the next person to be a leader.
It's a really good byproduct of that.
Yeah.
What's the next 5 or 10 years look like for you?
Seattle, DC, back and forth. Go to DC at least twice a year to see family, I have a younger brother who's going to be graduating high school this year. Can't believe that. So getting him through college.
Yeah.
I like the role that I'm in. I really, really love the role that I'm in. And as long as the leadership is there, or the leadership that possibly comes in, is supportive, I'm thoroughly enjoying my new role. Yeah, some vacation. Definitely try and take one big vacation every year. I didn't get a chance to do that this year because I did 2 parties, 2 sneaker balls, right? Yeah. And then we had this conference. So just travel, family, come and visit you guys. Don't give me a reason to come and get some.
We always talk about coming. Are you coming to North Carolina?
I will be in North Carolina next year.
Okay, we'll make it work.
Western New York in the fall, best place to be.
I'm coming in the summer.
Or that works.
Yeah,
too.
that's awesome.
Or you could find us at Disney too if you're ever doing any vacation.
We'll find him at Disney.
But also too, I know you guys know, I started writing a book, but my vision has been low for the last year and a half, almost 2 years, right? So with this current disability, I haven't been able to finish it. So in the next 5 years, I hope to have the book released. I have this new tablet. It's a remarkable tablet, and I write on it, and it transcribes it for me. And so I'm able to write now, and I'm using it as accommodation. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, the remarkable tablet. Can sponsor us.
Yes.
RecLessPodcast@gmail.com.
Well, Tiffany, I look forward to seeing that book.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Really quick, last question on the spot. Favorite session of the week?
That's not
What?
because I presented too.
We're reckless.
2.5.
Sorry.
Outside of yours.
Outside of yours, what was your favorite one that you attended in the audience?
Here's my bias. Late night hype.
Oh, the LA one.
No, DC.
Okay.
DC Parks and Recreation has a program where they keep community centers and pools open at different locations. They rotate until midnight. It's for teens to keep them off the streets. It was during a surge of violence.
Mhm.
So it's been a hit.
That's cool.
So there's programming happening inside and outside. There's food, there's entertainment. Yeah, and I mean, it was a lived experience. And so they had actual, like people could go through tables. They had like snow cone maker, popcorn maker.
Yeah.
Like people were able to experience the late night hype. Everything from the music being super loud to the lights being off. They put a lot of energy in.
That's cool.
It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for being
I
here.
wish we could do it more. Thank you for joining us today.
I knew when I saw you in the hallway it was you, by the way.
Yeah,
Earlier
he came
today,
in and
yeah,
said,
you did
I
guess.
saw Tiffany in the hallway, and I'm like, that's cool. She's just hanging out.
She did not have a good dismount. I was like, hey, are you on the podcast? She was like,
I'm looking for somebody.
yeah.
Yeah.
Someone on the wrong floor.
Yeah. That told me how she was blind. She was like, oh.
Oh, thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I've reached out to you a couple times and you were jacking me around too. So I knew.
So when I first reached out, she's like, Shane already called me. And I'm like, well, don't tell Shane that this is booked.
Yeah. I knew I was getting jacked around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love you guys.
love you. And she was great.
Yeah, nice
Yeah.
work. Nice
Tiffany is someone that we've all known for a long time,
Yep.
and she's never, ever wavered against a challenge. And she's done a lot of great things and continues to. And, you know, like we talked about with having uncomfortable conversations, I've always admired that. She just is willing to take on a new task that a lot of people wouldn't take on.
She's the epitome of what I think of when you hear the term moving forward, regardless. Because she gets knocked down and she'll admit it. And she's had tough moments and career setbacks or life setbacks. You know, there are things that happen in the DC area that can really bring her down. But she's going to go out and get her PhD. She's going to go out and take on the next task. She's going to be a consultant. She is going to continue to move forward. And health issues and all. Nothing is stopping her from moving forward. I think there's something just really beautiful about that.
Yeah, she had an experience. I'm not going to share it because it's personal experience, but she shared it with us. I don't think that 99% of people would have been able to, and this happened Tuesday morning,
Yeah.
I think. So of this conference, 99% of people would have heard the news that Tiffany had heard and probably not been able to function and persevere and be who she is at this
She's
conference.
here, she's smiling.
Yep.
She's presenting.
That's a testament. Like that's a very good example of the kind of person she is.
Yeah.
And one little side note for Tiffany, and I didn't mention it while she was here, but I think for our listeners, if they're still listening,
Why would you be?
she is a ball of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so outside of all of the amazing things she shared and the way that she articulates that, good time. So if anybody's out there looking for a mentor or someone to go out and grab lunch with or something like that, if you're in her neck of the woods, she's a good time too, you know.
The energy is just contagious when you're hanging out with her.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was a really good pull. It was
great
my
job,
pull.
Jay.
I can't believe
No, it wasn't your fault. I was the host today. and
it was
I
totally
concur.
going to be mine.
Well, hey, it's been a pleasure. It's sad that this is coming to an end, that we're going to go back to doing this virtually.
Yeah.
It's been so much fun doing it in person and seeing each other all week and hanging out. And hopefully it can be done again and without having to wait a year.
It's been cool to be here this week and see how many people at least project that this is something
That they've
they've
heard of it.
heard of or think it's cool that we're doing it. And so
Yeah, well, I'm exhausted. So I mean, you know, as bittersweet as it is, I'm sure you guys feel the same way. I'm tired. I want to enjoy the rest of the time we have together, but I agree with what Jay just mentioned. It would be really cool if there was any way we could do an in-person show at some point between now and the next conference.
Yep. Well, thank you for listening to the most recent episode of RecLess. We hope you enjoyed it.
see you next time.